August was a pretty busy month with the release of not one, not two, but 4 budget keyboards. There was the Psycho 7, MKC75, Neo 65, and the keyboard we'll be building today. Now last week I posted my video on the Neo 65, but that wasn't supposed to happen. Today's keyboard was supposed to arrive 15 days after the group buy ended, so around August 25th or so, before the Neo 65 even went on sale. But it's finally here and we can build the Choice 65. There's actually a lot more stupid shipping stuff I could talk about when it comes to this keyboard, but I've opted not to since it won't affect any of you. The Choice 65, as you can guess, is a new budget 65% keyboard that is priced at just $125. It comes in this really clean box with plenty of foam to keep it safe. You get your rubber feet and gaskets of course, but also a bunch of screws and I have no idea what they're for. I think they're literally just extras in case you lose yours. Lifting up another piece of foam reveals the carrying case for this keyboard. It's not a hard case like a lot of other keyboards out there, and I personally wouldn't use it to carry my board around since there's a huge hole on one side that'll just let things in. But if you do feel comfortable using it, it's a pretty nice case. One thing to note though is that the strap holding the case closed isn't a button that's physically connecting it, that's magnetic, so don't try to hold it upside down or anything, the keyboard can fall out. Speaking of which, here's the keyboard itself. I've gone with the E-White and Copper variant, and as you can see, it's got a simple but nice side profile. It's easy to pick up but still looks good. The mirror weight on the back is a bit plain, but the shape of it and the diamond accent at the bottom gives it a bit of flair. You can see the copper quote-unquote from the top and the bottom of the keyboard as well, but I'm pretty sure it's not actually copper and it's just anodized aluminum. Not that there's anything wrong with that, it is still very pretty and I bought it for a reason, but it's not really copper. If you want real copper, take a look at this. This is my Mode Envoy. It is green aluminum with copper weights and accents, and it is beautiful. It uses a copper plate as well, but that's besides the point. I brought it out yet again to compare the color of real copper to the anodized aluminium. As you can see, the aluminum is quite a bit more pink than actual copper. And I have the perfect keycap set to go with it later in the video. And yes, I am going to use both aluminium and aluminum in this video. While we've got the keyboard face down, let's put on the rubber feet. It's just standard feet application method for a keyboard, just peel them off and stick them in the feet holes. The fit is quite tight though, so it does take a little bit of effort to make sure they're in there all the way. As I mentioned earlier, this keyboard comes with a bunch of screws as well, but I'm pretty sure you don't need any of these. Everything is already screwed in, so these appear to just be extras. All you need to build and take apart this keyboard is a T6H bit, and we'll be using my electronic screwdriver to do that. My bits luckily are just long enough to fit. With that done, we can turn the keyboard around and start building. The top part just comes right off, nothing special here, and it seems to just hold the plate down with no gaskets for the top side. Even if we wanted to put gaskets on there doesn't seem to be a slot to put it in anyways, and we don't have enough, so we'll just put it to the side for now. We probably won't even need it though because of all this foam. You got some sort of rubbery plate pad that goes on top of the PC plate, and a pour-on pad that acts as the gasket for the entirety of the plate, not just the sides like most gaskets. Honestly, it's a bit of a mess, but that's the gimmick of this keyboard, that by having your gasket covers the entire plate and not just the sides, it gives you a consistent typing experience. Anyways, under that giant sheet of pour-on, we got yet another sheet of pour-on that goes on top of the PCB. The PCB isn't able to screw into the plate or anything despite having the holes where you'd think it would be able to, so it would just fall into the keyboard without the switches holding it into place. And I do have to say, this is a beautiful PCB with all these copper lines running through it and everything. I just love this aesthetic. This keyboard doesn't come with stabilizers by the way, so we'll have to provide our own, and we could use some screw-in stabilizers, but I've opted to go with TXAP stabs. This would be my first time using these, and I'm excited to see what all the hype is about. To be completely honest, I didn't know that these were clip-in stabilizers when I bought them, and I also got the wrong size set. I got the ones for the 1.6mm PCB, and this PCB is 1.2. So I have an extra set lying around for a future build, but I'll pretend that was on purpose. What I am clear on though is the purpose of this thing. This came with the stabilizers, and a similar sort of thing came with the Neo 65 stabilizers. And I got a few comments in that video explaining to me that these things are for the legs of the stabilizers. They keep them spread apart. With clip-in stabilizers, if you pull too hard on them, I guess, they can sort of squeeze together and fall out of the PCB, and by putting these things in between the legs, that can no longer happen, so thank you very much to my comment section for explaining that to me. If you didn't, I probably would have asked in this video as well. Now the gaskets of this keyboard don't go on the bottom or the top, they actually get placed on the walls to keep the PCB from bouncing around in there. As for our switches, we're going with the Flower Shadow switches from B-Sun. They're a pre-loop linear switch and people seem to love them as they sold out 3 times already, though the packaging could use some work. Mine just came in this really cheap bag. The reason we'll be using them though is because I had them lying around and I think the colors match, so that's good enough for me. Here's what they sound like. With our stabilizers and switches installed, we can hook up our PCB to the daughter board, but that's a bit of a pain because the JST cable isn't long enough to let you rest the PCB on the table as you're connecting it, so you're gonna have to lift it up and carefully try to wiggle that in there. There have been reports of people's JST cables coming in broken or the pins being bent, but luckily for me that wasn't the case on my Choice 65. Now thanks to the Poron pad, this is supposed to have a consistent typing feel across the entirety of the board, but I mean, to me, it just feels like another gasket-mounted keyboard, so... I actually forgot to put the rubbery plate pad back on as I was assembling the PCB, but luckily it doesn't go under the switches or stabilizers or anything. You can just toss it on there afterwards, and it won't fall out of the case either once you've put the top piece back on. I know some people chose to not build their Choice 65 with that pad in there because they don't like the way it affects the sound, but my personal philosophy when it comes to building keyboards is that if it comes with foam, then the foam goes in there. So, in it goes. With the keyboard all assembled, we can finally peel off the plastic to let the mirror weight shine, and shine it does. I just have a single bright light lighting the scene so you can't see it that well, but this is a perfect mirror. Unfortunately, it's also a fingerprint magnet, so I would never look at the bottom of this again. And now for our keycaps. I mentioned earlier that I have the perfect set to go with this keyboard, and here it is. This is a metal briefcase it comes in, and these are the Aluvia anodized aluminum keycaps. These are based on the very popular Aluvia keycaps, except these are made out of metal. And I have to say that I think that the pink of these keycaps matches the pink of this quote-unquote copper anodized aluminum keyboard perfectly. Well, technically it's not perfect, they are slightly different colors, but I doubt anyone's ever gonna actually notice. Speaking of things that people won't notice, these aren't actually Aluvia keycaps, these are the B stock variant, meaning that these aren't $400 like the A stock. I actually got these for half the price, and at the time of recording, you could actually get these for $125 on novelkeys.com. And more importantly, that means that there are also imperfections with these keycaps, and unlike the fact that the color of the keyboard and the keycaps don't perfectly match, I'm not going to point out what isn't perfect about these. I want to do a little experiment and see if you can see it, so let me know in the comments if you can. For the record, it is one of the keys that will be on the keyboard, but let's see what they sound like. And I just have to say, wow, that is dock. That is probably the loudest, dockiest keyboard I own, and it's probably not a fair comparison because this is using metal keycaps, but that is really docky. My AMFA uses metal keycaps as well, but it's nowhere near as loud or deep as this one is. I also took the ceramic keycaps off the Bakaneko, so that one doesn't count. I put the one-piece keycaps back on that. But overall, I just really enjoy typing on this keyboard. The reason that the Neo 65 has just been sitting up there on top of the screen is because I wanted to make a point about how in order to buy this keyboard, you'd have to ignore the Neo 65 to justify going out of your way to buy this, because you can't buy this anymore. It's out of stock. whereas the Neo 65 you can actually buy. But I can't really make that point anymore because I really like the sound of this keyboard. Anyways, thanks for watching all the way to the end, and subscribe if you want to see me build the MKC75 and Cycle 7 when those arrive in the future. And if you can't wait that long, then check out my build of the Neo 65. That should be on screen right about now. I'll see you next time.